Good morning. It is April 2nd, 2017, 8:18 in the morning. A gentleman who is discussing about sunlight. He did mention that there's a lot of things in life could filter out the natural sun rays, and that without the proper amount of the full spectrum of the sunlight, it could cause sickness in the body. He also mentioned that these light particles from the sun has information, and this information communicates with our bodies. He also mentioned about the hair that is like an antenna. And I heard that years ago, almost 30 years ago, I heard that. Sunlight has information in it, and what makes me agree with his statement about the sun is that when I was doing ayahuasca, it was in the daylight, the sunlight, that I saw more visuals. Again, my eyes are closed, but it's sun outside, and the sun, goes through the eyelids. And that's where I saw most of my visuals. But in the darkened room, the experience of the visuals had what I would call a lower energy / fearful experience. I concur about the sunlight and information. What that has to do with this video also is about enlightenment and how it's true. A lot of people are doing things more indoors and thus getting less sunlight and thus getting dumbed down because we're not getting the information. This also leads me to think about yesterday. Yesterday I was feeling extremely zapped, and it was due to a video that I was watching that reminded me of this low frequency, not illuminated. And it made it sound like that it was something scientific. And I think that's why it also had an effect on me, because I come from a science background. But what was being said was fear. And fear has to do with not being enlightened about something, being controlled by something you don't understand because there's no light on it. Even though I thought the person believed he was illuminated. This person from yesterday, not this person that I'm watching now that's teaching about sunlight, but this other program that I was watching yesterday. He was a psychologist or something, a school psychologist. And the other person, there was two people from yesterday. They were both negative and teaching about the races to be separated, that blacks are to be separated from whites, how if you intermarry or date, that the potential money for the black community is being diminished. And the world is your community because we're all interconnected. And yes, we live in neighborhoods, things like that. But no neighborhood runs by itself. Even though if it's a gated community, it has to get outside of that gate to get its food and all that. People have to prepare their food, the farmers, the people who work in the store. And to use this fear because of people who are not illuminated and people who are, like last month on March the 20th, 2017, a white man had felt paranoid about the fear of black men dating, socializing with white women, and felt that he had to save the white woman. So he goes and stabs numerous times a 66-year-old black man, a poor black guy who picks cans for a living so that he could redeem them and get some pennies off of them. So that's not a threat. But this man believed it. This white man believed that. And he went and killed somebody and said that this was just a dry run. This man, this murderer, is clearly unenlightened. He needed to have faith in himself and his ability, even though he was physically strong. He had just gotten out of the army in 2012. He looked healthy and strong. He didn't look like he was poor or anything like that. So it's something that's going deeper. And it's not about his resources, it's the fear of not having resources. But we get the resource from the sun. There's information out in that sun. Wouldn't it be great if we could sit out in the sun and get the downloads of information to empower ourselves so that we can run our own ship, so to speak, and not be fearful of these so-called teachers and psychologists and bullies make you afraid to intermingle with other people. You know, people who just want to stay within their so-called group, they're usually narrow-minded people. But when I'm with a whole spectrum of people, let's say at a fair, and they have food and products to buy, isn't it exciting? Don't you feel fulfilled? I know I do. Person that was trying to scare the Black community from knowing other people outside of your race and using economic. Don't believe them. Don't believe their low energy. Yes, you have bigots and racists out there, but there's always been haters out there. All my life, I've been surrounded by people who said, don't do this, don't do that. And it's their own fear. And it has nothing to do with real reality. But they want you to think it's real, that racism is real. Your own mother and father could hate you. Your siblings could hate you. So if it's not your neighbor, it could be your family member. If it's not your boss, it could be someone from the train. It's always opposition. Because in this physical world, it's all about dichotomy. The yes and no, the black and white, the yin and the yang. So we have to pierce through this so-called logic of hatred, pierce through and get our download from the sun. That's all information that will be able to teach you, I believe, I want to believe that can teach you how to get out of poverty, how to stand your own ground and not be so intimidated by other people who we perceive of having more or to be stronger than, etc. This man, that murderer, James Jackson, he had fear. He felt inadequate. He doesn't know himself. When you see a picture of him running from the scene of the crime, he's dressed like 007, like a man who's connected, that has resources. And he didn't know that he had the resources and the power in his own hand. And he needed an 18-inch knife to kill an elderly 66-year-old man. You think he really knew himself? He didn't know his own ability. Now that's a fool. Let's stop being foolish and stop believing in the lie called racism, sexism, religiousism. Let's stop the BS and let us really learn to love ourselves, get to know our bodies, our mind, everything. Get connected to nature. I just had a second thought regarding the sunlight and that it has these information particles. Just imagine these religious groups that have to cover up their bodies, in particular the ladies. Now, if sunlight has information and being exposed to it, now if you're all covered up, how are you going to get that information? So isn't this the dumbing down of ladies? keep them ignorant and not spiritually connected. Now, women in general, we love to seek out spiritual things. And then they create a religion that keeps us in bondage. And in some faiths, you cannot read. They don't want you to read the scripture, even though it's supposed to be directly from God. They don't want you to read God's material. And then you have to wear these clothes to cover everything. So what's actually happening? They don't want you to really know what the scriptures say, and then they don't want you exposed to sunlight, and thus not getting those spiritual information, those downloads from the source. So isn't that problematic? And then they say, well, it's for your own good, your own protection. Look how men act. So maybe it's the men that should be covered up. Maybe they should cover their eyes.
Not all men, just the ignorant ones.
So maybe this is just a scare tactic against women to keep us dumbed down so we don't get the downloads and have true freedom.
Lastly, this particular YouTuber that discussed about the importance of being in sunlight and how we are focusing on the body part rather than the whole. So we're not thinking or using our body holistically. This then reminded me of the food industry. What is the food industry doing? It's taking the part rather than the whole, processing it so that in essence the food is dead. It has no energy or life force in it, and we ingest this. Moreover, this reminded me of our living condition. We live in square houses, rectangle apartments. The square or the 90-degree angle is not a natural shape. You don't really find it in nature. What you do find in nature are curves. Just like our bodies, it's curved. And so we have to live in a habitat that is unnatural, and we're stuck all day. We're not getting any sunlight, and we become stagnant, and we get prone to diseases and depression. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it inspired you to think outside of what you see, because what you see can be used against you to manipulate you, to have fear against others, and fear of self. Love yourself, love your neighbor. Okay, guys? So, feel free to comment below, to share this video with friends, family members, to subscribe to Spirit Journey, and to give me the thumbs like up. Peace, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day.